G'day guys, how are you? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing a review of a horror film from the United States of America, English language, released in the year 2012, directed by Jennifer Chambers Lynch, and this film is called Chained. And the story to Chained is as follows. When 8-year-old Tim and his mother Sarah get picked up by a psychopathic cab driver named Bob, it ends up being their last ride together. Bob murders the young boy's mother and keeps Tim as his unwilling protege, making him clean up the mess following each murder he commits. Years later, as a teenager, Tim must choose whether to follow in Bob's serial killer footsteps or break free. So the movie starts off with Sarah, who's a young mother who has an 8-year-old boy named Tim. They have just come out of the cinema and they're going to catch a cab home. So they don't know that the cab driver is a psychopathic serial killer, and he abducts both of them. So he ends up killing Sarah and taking Tim as his protege. So he locks Tim inside his house, and he basically says that he has to clean up after every murder he commits, and he's going to be his right-hand man. He's going to have to serve him breakfast every single morning, and that he has to do everything for him. So he's basically a slave. And Bob says that it's going to be like this for the rest of his life. So he's stuck inside his house, and then years later, when Tim is now a teenager, he's still doing the same thing, but then he starts to think whether or not he wants to make a break for freedom and redeem himself, or stay put and basically follow Bob in his serial killing ways. So if you want to know how the movie unfolds and what's in store for Tim, that's something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on the movie. This one is a very psychologically damaging film, and I actually thought it was very fascinating. If you're a fan of gore, you're not going to like this one, and if you don't like your very emotional, hard-hitting, depressing films, stay away from this one. It had a very dark atmosphere, kind of reminiscent of Seven. Yes, it's a different film from Seven. It's nowhere near as good as that movie, but it has the same hopeless feeling. This movie centers on an 8-year-old kid who has been abducted by a deranged psychopath. He is forced to witness these horrible things, and straight away you gain a very strong sympathetic bond with Tim. You want to see Tim escape, but you just don't see any way possible, because it's very realistic. You don't get, these fanciful situations where he gets an opportunity to escape. It's just, he's locked inside his house. This is his universe, and the majority of the film takes place in the house. Therefore, it feels like it's the only place of existence that this young child has. So I felt really, really bad for this poor kid, and I thought the way that he was acted, I can't recall the actor's name, Eamon Farron. That was when he was a teenager, but the young child version of Tim was very good as well. Very emotional. He was absolutely terrified, and yeah, as I said, it's a very realistic portrayal of somebody who is absolutely, stuck in a situation that they never should have been exposed to. Then you've got the reason why the film does work on a lot of levels, and that is the serial killing performance by Vincent D'Onofrio. It's one of the best performances. It's one of the best performances that I have seen in serial killer films. I thought he was very real. He wasn't painted as a black and white sort of monster. He was painted as a very real person, but very psychologically damaged. And it brings up the idea of, if you're raised in a very bad environment, you're going to grow up to be a very bad person. And yes, this serial killer had been raised in ghastly ways, and that you get a strange sympathetic quality for the serial killer as well, that you don't condone what he's doing and you don't really like him at all, obviously, but you can understand why he's like this, and it kind of feels like he had no real hope in life, because if you're being raised in this very traumatic environment, you're going to grow up with a lot of problems, and this is the case with this serial killer. And the way that Vincent D'Onofrio portrays himself, I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and I really like the strange relationship between serial killer and child. To start with, it's very scary. The kid is very scared, and the serial killer is very intimidating. But when the movie progresses, the relationship starts to get very strange. It almost feels like the serial killer is now the father figure, and that the kid has resigned to the fact that he is not going anywhere. So the bond starts to get a little bit closer, and in the most unlikely sort of circumstances. So the psychological sort of relationship and exchanges between serial killer and child was what made the film very unique, and that's why I feel that it is a very good serial killer film. Unfortunately for me, I didn't like the fact that at the start of the movie you get him as a child, and then, about halfway through, or a little bit less, it jumps straight into his teenage years. So there is a big gap between child and teenager that is just missed out. So I felt that if there's a little bit more patience from the director, or maybe a little bit more budget and time, she could have just drawn out that sort of transition from child to teenager a little bit more. Therefore, you would have got a stronger sense of the time. So when you cut from a child to a teenager straight away, it feels like, yeah, it is a long time, but it doesn't hit you as hard. It just, you don't go along with that painful, boring experience that he was going through. So I kind of felt, yeah, if that was drawn out a little bit more, it would have had heaps more impact, because that hopeless feeling of, nothing is ever going to change, I felt, it was very strong throughout the entire movie. But that jump from child to teenager was just a small criticism, but one that I thought, could have been improved a little bit. Now, the gore, as I said, it's a very nasty film, but it's more nasty on psychological level than gore. There is a little bit of gore in it. It's not very graphic at all, but the kills are quite nasty to see because it's all happening in front of a child. So that's that emotional impact that you get with each kill. The soundtrack was pretty much non-existent. I can't recall any music actually, or if there is music, there is not a lot of it. And it's a very low budgety kind of feel, which I actually thought helped contribute to the raw, hopeless, depressing atmosphere. Some directors really make use of their lack of budget and actually create something that is appearing of a higher budget, which is the case with this movie. Jennifer Chambers Lynch, very good director, and I feel that she possesses a lot of skill, but unfortunately with this movie there are a few criticisms that prevent it from being a great film. Now, what I really didn't like about the movie is that for 3/4 of it, it's very realistic and it's very unique because there's no fanciful things happening. There's no unrealistic sort of stupid moments from the serial killer that allows the kid a chance to escape. And you feel, as I said, a strong sense of there's no escape, there's no hope. But then right at the end, it goes down a very silly path, and I thought it was absolutely unnecessary. If the director left it to be, continue to be very real up until its ending, I thought it would have been much better and would have capped off a very good film. But unfortunately, the ending was absolutely ridiculous. I thought, I'm not going to give anything away, but you can kind of sense that the director wanted to add just a little bit more at the end. It was a little bit too greedy. Therefore, when the twist comes, it just goes against everything that the film is about, and that is the biggest disappointment for me. There are moments in the film that drag a little bit. There's a lot of dialogue. Fortunately, the dialogue for the most part is very well written. The characters are very well drawn out, which is what you need for a character-based film. But yeah, just a few moments where the film kind of dragged a little bit, but it never gets itself bogged down. So all in all, it's a very impressive serial killer film. If you're a fan of these types of movies, I would say definitely go out there and see it. But those criticisms, they're not massive, but they are enough to keep it from being a masterpiece. So overall, I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. Definitely a movie I would recommend if you like these depressing psychological horror films. So that is my review for the American horror film Chained. 3.5 stars out of 5. Alright guys, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.